Let's Talk Supply Chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we're kicking things off with a question. One of today's guests used the power of data to optimize supply chain processes. But according to Gartner, what percentage of data science projects fail to yield actionable results? Think about this one, because I'm going to give you the answer at the end of the show. Well, today I'm joined by a brand with over 16 years of parcel agreement management expertise. Wow, that's a mouthful, but I love it. And they have generated over $300 million in savings for their clients. And that is Reveel. I'm super excited to have you guys back on the show today. And we're doing a bit of a partnering case study, which is a lot of fun. So today we've got Marc Aliotta and from Reveel and Jack Margeson, Vice President of Alliances at Deposco. Now I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute. But today we're going to be talking all about their unique strategic partnership, plus so much more, right? We're going to be exploring how that partnership came to be. We're going to be talking about some of the biggest industry challenges in their minds and how you guys are seeing it and how you've made it happen through deep integration.
Yep.
Wow. Integration is key. Everybody is wondering, how long is technology going to take me to integrate into my systems and our processes and what we're doing? But we're also going to be talking about the many tangible benefits from this partnership and how you've made it work. And I cannot wait. So welcome to the show, Marc and Jack. Do you want to start with introductions?
Sure.
Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, that sounds
And a little bit of a background.
Yeah, sounds perfect. My name's Jack Margeson. I'm the Vice President of Alliances at Deposco. So overseeing our strategic partner programs, both in the U.S. and in the European region. And that, as we look, Deposco is a supply chain platform. We focus on warehouse management, order management, supply chain planning, intelligence, and more. So as you think about end-to-end fulfillment for direct-to-consumer, that's really where we focus, especially in the middle market. A little bit about my background. I've been here about 8 years. Prior to that, was working alongside NCR, kind of working the brick and mortar side. Was actually in operations, so overseeing warehousing, and then spent years in the military before that, which kind of formed the beginning of my career. So
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of that has informed kind of how we take a partnering approach. So I'm excited to be meeting with Reveel today.
Yeah. Marc, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about you?
Sure thing. Yeah, Marc Aliotta, VP of Partnerships at Reveel. I've been at Reveel for about a little over 2 years now. So I joined early 2023 to help build up the partnership program. Prior to that, I have about 7 years doing spend management, healthcare. And then, prior to Reveel, I was at money.com actually building out their partnership program in North America. Yeah. So came to Reveel to help build out the partnership program. Little background of Reveel. We're on the post shipment, not the execution side, but after those invoices go out, with the carriers. And so what we kind of like to brand it as is parcel spend management 2.0. So we're doing things a little differently in the space, more technology driven versus professional service driven. So I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that a little more today with you guys, see how we're integrating with Deposco, making a more like software approach, the supply chain management sector. But yeah, and then also thank you for your service, Jack. I'm a U.S. Army veteran myself.
Thank you for your service as well. Wow, we've got two on the show today. And I just want to let everybody know we are coming at you sort of live from the floor at Manifest 2025. There's a lot of folks here. I think the energy is quite palpable.
Yeah, it's been a great show.
Yep.
Right?
It's been a great
Awesome. All right. So let's get into this. Now, I did promise us talking about some of the biggest industry challenges. I want to know what that looks like from your perspective, right? Because everybody is experiencing disruptions and challenges. You're talking to a lot of clients, you're working together with that. So what are some of the biggest industry challenges that you're seeing? And then we'll go to Marc.
Sure. Yeah. And as I think back on the last few years, I think some of the biggest challenges is the uncertainty and what does the year ahead hold? So every year,
ball. I mean, everybody wants us to have a crystal ball.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. Everybody wants to know what does next year look like. But, there's a lot of changes that happen both at the global scale, at the local scale, domestic scale. That really kind of go towards, well, how do I plan as a business? How do I shape, where I need to go next year? Knowing that supply chain is changing really quickly, that distribution, fulfillment strategies are evolving all the time. And so, I would say the uncertainty kind of is the biggest part that we see. And so if that's where, as we talk today, you'll see where Reveel and Deposco have really focused on really making sure that we're helping provide that data going through. But I would say that the uncertainty is really the key challenge right now. It's just things are changing. Carriers are making big moves. There's policy changes. There's, local changes, or USPS, and more. So I think there's a lot in that sense.
Yeah. And before you go, I actually I was on my show just a few weeks ago, and there was an article about this, or I was a guest on somebody's show, and I was like, we have crystal ball syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? We all want the crystal ball. We all want everybody to talk and predict and all this kind of stuff. And we kind of got to step back from that. There is uncertainty. We got to get comfortable. We got to sit in that uncertainty, right?
Absolutely.
And not expect to understand what that future holds. So, Marc, what do you think? What are some of the biggest industry challenges?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo the uncertainty piece, it's, after the pandemic, I think a lot of shippers realized that you can't really trust just on the major carriers, especially on the parcel side, because of capacity issues. And so that uncertainty kind of led itself to diversification strategies. So now there's like this sort of talk among shippers of like, who are those other carriers that we could work with?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where the uncertainty is, but people are trying to build trust for these new carriers.
Yeah.
So that's coming out more, and that's what we're seeing. And then it's just the other big trend is just cost keeps going up. And so that's where we live on the spend management side. Right. And it's just like lockstep at the end of every year, we get those general rate increases from the carriers.
And you got to keep on top of it.
Yes.
Right.
And it's all about the data, right? Like, how do you get into the data? How do you build transparency and visibility so you can take actionable steps forward to mitigate spend?
Data.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where we kind of live on that back end piece. And that's why this partnership with Deposco is so great, because they're on the execution side, and there's so much you can learn from looking at your actual invoice data sets, right?
Yeah.
Giving them
Well, and you talk about diversifying suppliers. We had a Canada Post strike. I don't know if you guys know, because you're not from Canada. I'm from Canada. But we had one around the holidays.
Yeah.
And so diversifying suppliers. I mean, I had a YouTube code stuck in the mail for 3 months. I only just got it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's
it's not a parcel, but that really makes a difference. When somebody goes down, who are you going to turn to? Because your clients and your customers and the consumers still want their product.
And going back to your crystal ball, I mean, I think that's the perfect example. You can't plan for something like that. So how do you make sure you're prepared to handle an unexpected event? I think that's where it's.
Yeah. Well, if we were in my studio, I usually have a sign that says collaboration is the future of business, because I truly believe that it is. And I think people are probably tired of me talking about it, but we're going to talk about it one more time, because like you said, you guys have come together in a strategic collaboration. How did it come about, right? Because I think a lot of times we look at each other as possible competitors, but we really need to come together in collaboration for the betterment, not only of the industry, but clients, consumers, etc. So talk to us about how that collaboration came about.
Yeah, and maybe I'll start and hand over.
As we look, Marc and I in our respective roles and partnerships really understand that fundamentally, as you were mentioning, the business world is changing. Clients don't want to have a group of partners who are kind of pushing away and doing that. They really want to focus on their business. It's our responsibility as their partners to make sure that we're providing not only the best software and partnership and platform that we can, but that we're also looking ahead at what's out in the market, what's changing, and how do we help guide them with partnerships and introductions that help grow their business. So they can step back and really focus on sales channels, selling efficiencies and more, and rely on their partners in that space. So we're constantly looking for that, that kind of a handshake. And as Marc mentioned, we really focus on the pre-shipment side. So everything from the time the order's placed online until it gets onto that parcel truck. Now, Reveel and Marc's team do a phenomenal job post. And so as we look at a lot of the questions that come up, they weren't really coming to, or they were coming to Deposco, didn't really have the answer. And so as we met each other, really played out. So.
And you're sharing data.
Well, that's what it came down to. We got down and dirty with the data. We realized there were some elements that were on their end that didn't exist on our end, and then vice versa, right? And so one of those examples is SKU product level data, right? You don't get that on the invoice data sets, which is extremely important if you're trying to understand your cost as a company, right? You want to tie that back to product. And so once we realized that that was that synergy there, was adding that product level cost aspect to the analysis, we created the integration with, organically, it was actually with a joint customer, which worked out. They served on our customer advisory board. So it ended up kind of working out really well. And so we built that out and we were able to drive a lot of value for a particular shipper and really like emphasize where they could actually take actionable insights on the information that we're supplying to.
I love it, right? Because you come to the table and you're probably hesitant at first because you're like, where do we overlap? Where do we not overlap? But really, that's how innovation comes to be, is in those uncomfortable spaces where we can be uncomfortable, but still share and sort of figure out where each of us plays a role. Why do you think it's so important, not only for your companies respectively internally, but then also for your customers, to be able to collaborate like this?
Well, I think, it was interesting. In 2021, we were speaking, and we were having a conversation with Forrester, and they told us something really interesting. They said, companies are leaving software partners and platforms that work fine. And the reason is, they work fine for their company. The reason they were leaving them is because they didn't feel like they had the answers for what was ahead. They weren't looking forward in that sense. So in this kind of period of uncertainty, they would honor their partners and saying, hey, what's ahead? And their partner for saying, the same thing they'd say for the last 3 years. And so people in the enterprise started replatforming. They started looking for that. As we look, I think it's critically important in this space that we're looking ahead at that end, and Reveel provides data that Deposco doesn't have. Deposco has data that Reveel doesn't have. And in today's world, that data is king for that. And so finding those and finding that success, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it was a great match because, Deposco is a very software driven company. Same thing like Reveel, right? Software as a service and the cloud. And so what this allows for shippers to do is gain a sense of freedom because they're able to share information way faster, right, than we already did before. So I think that's been the trend, is that a lot of like legacy softwares that existed in the space, they've kind of like created like almost like artificial moats around their software, which doesn't allow shippers to really innovate, right? And so I think that's where we've kind of taken it with like our partnership.
Well, and they don't want to have huge tech stacks and have to be able to find technology for the different challenges that they have. They want their supply chain or technology partners to be able to do that for them.
Exactly.
Right? It's a bit of a change of mindset.
Yeah. And they don't want to have to go through the design of it and learn what they get to know. We would rather say, hey, this is where the real value is, and let's bring it to you.
Okay. So walk me through the integration. What does that look like? So what do you do versus Reveel? How does a shipment sort of move through both of your platforms? What's sort of the end result?
Sure. And I guess as we think about the data, when it originates, it kind of all originates at the customer. So that customer places that order. As that comes in, that flows through to Deposco. So we're looking at the parcel level detail. We're helping them select which carrier. We're helping them automate that. DIMS, lates, product level information, everything that exists within the warehouse or within the order. So we pull all that information through, and we're always helping optimize what do we think is going to be the best way to execute on that order.
Okay.
And then when it gets out the door, Deposco's reach and visibility really kind of slows down. We can see the broad level movement, but customers come and they say, well, there's all this post-shipment execution and insights that we need to drive. And that's where Reveel really excels. So Deposco creates that data, pulls that through, and then hands it over to Reveel. And then Reveel does some really exciting stuff.
And the data sets that we work on, they're directly integrated from the carriers. So those invoice data sets, we're collecting them directly from the carriers. So that's the data set that we have. And then we merge that data set with what Jack described as actually the manifest data set, the order data set, right? That's where everything manifests, where it begins, right? It says, which no pun intended, because I know where I manifest today. But we connect those data sets, and that's where you're able to really gain a lot of the value, right? And gain a lot of the insights is through that area. And on the post shipment side, right, there's just going to be a lot of changes to happen from the execution. Like you mentioned DIMS, build weight could be very different when you analyze your invoices, right? So there's going to be some forecasted costs initially on the manifest data set. There could be a massive delta you're talking about like if like, you know, you're forecasting $10. What if it lands at $12?
Right.
It's a 20% increase.
Increase.
Right. And that's the visibility that we're adding, you know, to the process.
And is it, it's not 2 sign-ins? Is it 2 logins, or what does that look like? I'm putting you on the spot.
You know how
I really want to know.
No, so it is. So Reveel has its platform, and Deposco has its platform, but they're really 2 different conversations.
Okay.
And I think that the challenging part historically, and Marc can speak to this as well, is historically before a platform like Reveel, it would get out the door with Deposco. And if you wanted to do this analysis and this audit, you would pull the information in manually. And then you would manually sort it and review it and go through it.
Is that Excel spreadsheets?
Excel spreadsheets, data, phone data sets. Yeah.
Okay.
And then where Reveel brings that is Deposco pushes that information. And then as Reveel does that, and Marc will talk about that, what we can do afterwards at Deposco is look at that data with them and say, okay, well, let's optimize the way that we're handling your shipments before they go out the door based on this. So it's a constant find.
Love that.
Yeah. It's constantly fleshing out like the data sets that are there. And a cool little case that ended up emerging that we realized it actually was one of our joint customers mentioned this was that, hey, this is great, this product level data that we're seeing. Can we trace it to destination? Right. So like you start thinking about all these different use cases to gain even more insights. And so the reason why he was concerned with that, he was a COO of the company, was that he wanted to really do drill downs for the marketing side of the house. Yeah. Yeah. So like, you know, usually like the way companies work is they'll average it out, right? Whatever your shipping cost is, the cost of our products. But if you could gain the insight to the certain destinations, essentially you have your customer acquisition costs at those specific destinations. So it just keep kind of drilling down and getting more into the details of what we could find.
So talk to me about that data and the details. What is the analytics that they're getting? Is there shared analytics between the 2 of you? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, what do you do with that data also? So on the Deposco side, we have a focus on data and intelligence as well, but that's aggregate level data, that's shipping intelligence, comparing it against broad level movement. Reveel really drives it down. So as we look, once that data around the orders, around the locations, and as we start looking at that, like Marc was talking about the heat mapping. Well, now that we know the customer acquisition cost in these different verticals, if they're in multiple locations, Deposco can then help them say, okay, well, let's move your inventory. And let's move your inventory.
You gotta add data about that. Yeah. And some feedback region. Yeah. Constant.
And so that data kind of reveals, no pun intended.
The puns are happy today.
It reveals a lot of information that historically you had to really use some heavy engineering engagements to go through. You had to use, third parties to really drive, or you had to put in an in-house data science team. And I know you read the stat about Gartner, so we'll give away the answer, but that's
please don't.
Historically, there have been mixed results on that, I'll say. And so
that's cool.
And if you could add to that on what I do with the data itself and some of those key areas?
Yeah, it's like, well, it's also just like a breath of fresh air too in the process, because with Deposco, the data exchange is so seamless in order for us to even like get these insights. So I do want to say that. And then the second piece is that as we're getting insights, especially as, like I mentioned earlier, diversification strategies.
Yeah.
If it emerges based on what we're seeing in the data set, say, hey, maybe there's like a carve out we could do with an alternative carrier or something like that. The execution is easy because Deposco's got all these carrier integrations ready to go from a WMS point of view.
Yeah.
And so we could go ahead and just connect those. And so a lot of times in the past, shippers were hesitant to do diversification strategies because they're like, wait, there's a lot of friction if I'm moving from UPS to, last month. What am I going to do? Well, if you have a software that's already set up, turnkey, then the implementation process is a lot more seamless.
Yeah. Well, and I think I like what you said around constant feedback loop. Yeah. Like everything's changing. Uncertainty you mentioned earlier. A constant feedback loop is really what you need so that you can make decisions like this, because that's what we all need, right? You can't make decisions 6 months down the line and then you've already wasted that 20% increase that maybe you didn't need and you could have avoided 6 months ago.
Exactly. And that's something that I think Marc and I take very seriously. Is you look back, it's even drilled in from our military days. There's you make decisions in real time. You observe, orient, decide, and act in real time throughout that. And that's where customers really want. So, you talk about the speed to change and in that uncertain times with Reveel and Deposco, you can look at that information and operate on it really, really quickly and adjust and not have to go through a long exercise to get that information.
Nobody likes a long exercise, especially when they have so many other things to do and think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about cost then, because we haven't really gotten necessarily, you've given us some really great examples about benefits, but let's talk about the cost. So how does that translate into savings? How does this partnership, this collaboration, that constant feedback loop, talk to me about that?
Absolutely. And on the beginning, as we look, the savings are different based on every type of customer.
Course, yeah.
And as you look, the savings, obviously, there's two types of savings at the beginning. Deposco, you're fixing your operational efficiency. So you're getting your fulfillment operations aligned. That plays out in terms of inventory efficiency, order efficiency. Like, for example, Deposco customers are 99% or over 99% accurate on inventory and order flow.
Wow. Okay.
But there's those secondary benefits. Like, now that we know our SKU level data, we've mapped that marketing information like Marc was talking about. You get the secondary savings on operational efficiencies, inventory placement, shipping savings. Okay. And then on the direct savings, Reveel has driven some really significant change. So if you were to talk about that.
Yeah, our savings is twofold. One is, this kind of hard savings that we're allowed to kind of like gain a lot of insight around contract optimization with carriers, because we actually digitize the carrier agreements too. So there's a lot you could gain from that. And so that's like a hard savings where we approximately can drive down costs around 20%. That's usually like where we kind of hit. And then the second area of savings is going to be around operational efficiencies. And that's the feedback loop that we have with Deposco, right? Because if Deposco is setting up business rules on the execution side, you should see that actually show itself on the invoice side, right? Costs should go down. Yeah. And so we have ways to highlight that on our end. So it creates that nice feedback loop, right? So when you're doing business rules, you're doing initiatives, you can see
who doesn't love an accurate invoice?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I used to have to go through the invoices and stamp it, approve it, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure nobody's doing that anymore because of the technology, but it's nice to know that you can trust the data on an invoice, that you can just pass it through.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? I mean, trust is key. It's kind of what we're talking about today. The two of you coming together in trust, right? Deposco and Reveel. And then the customers trusting the data and the platforms that you're providing them as well.
Absolutely.
Right? It's what we're talking about. But also, what we need to focus on is the customer's customer too, right? The customer's experience. We in supply chain not only have to recognize that our customers need efficiency, but they need that efficiency to create the experience so customers are coming back to them to buy, et cetera, et cetera. So talk to me about the collaboration on that part for your customers. What is that impact?
Absolutely. And as you think about that customer experience now, and I think customer satisfaction is harder and harder to assess.
So hard.
You're not really compared against your competitors anymore. You're compared against their best experience, period. So if I had a great experience with my online banking app, I expect whoever I'm buying from to give me that same quality of service. So your comparison is not against who else offers the service. It's against the experience.
Yeah.
And as we think about that, you called it out. You don't want to do the invoices. You don't want to go through and stamp those things. Nobody really does.
Right.
And that's all good for the business, but how does that play into the actual customer? The actual customer is going to get their product on time. They might get that product at a cheaper rate in future days, but they're going to get that more effectively. They're going to have a better customer experience and more reliably throughout. Mm-hmm. We know that drives return purchase behavior. We know that getting the visibility into where their package is, making sure that their package got to the right place, that they were shipped and paid the right amount, that's all critical because that's table stakes. So if you're missing that at the beginning, you're losing that customer to whatever next experience they go to.
Yeah, it's the competitive advantage. I mean, if you can get operations more efficient, you can have some cost savings. You can pass that on to the customer. Absolutely. Whoever that looks like. Right?
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for Reveals, we've put a lot of initiatives around customer success, right? It's really important that we're constantly tracking our satisfaction that we're gaining from our customers and that they're explaining to us, hey, like, this is what we want to see different. Right. And so we constantly have a feedback loop, even with their customers, where if there's innovative ideas that they could come up with to better their business, we're taking those and we're putting it in our software roadmap to make things better and better and better. And even with the collaboration with Deposco, it's like, you just learn so much by just going through the motions. Right. And even what I was saying earlier about like, with the COO, working with them and finding out, doing the heat map, right? Just going through that process the customer is giving you a lot of trust and giving you that honest feedback.
Yeah.
You're just creating a better product out of it.
Well, and then talk to me about scaling up, right? Because I think the two of you coming together in your partnership and collaboration, we've talked about all of the essential parts of being able to scale up a business. And that's what anybody really wants to do. And they want to work with partners that can help them do that. So talk to us about what that success has looked like for a client.
Absolutely. And I mean, as we think about it, as much as I would love to think otherwise, I don't think a lot of businesses, especially in retail or brands, want to really focus on their operations. They want to focus on their brand. They want to focus on their product and focus on their message. The more that we can reduce the level of effort that they have to spend in their operations, and it can build that trust that they know their operations are running efficiently. It's always being refined. It's being looked at. They're finding, areas of savings without having to add significant headcount to do that, and significant projects to do that. That allows them to turn to then go and focus on what new sales channels can I add, what new product lines can I add.
Brand messaging.
Exactly. And so the more we can take their focus on it away from, is my product being handled the right way? Put it towards, what can I do with my product? The more success they have.
I love that. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, just same thing. Like time is everything, right? You're always trying to reduce the amount of time that you're spending on things. And so the fact that we have these direct integrations with the carriers where we're taking in the data, in the past, folks would have to take those data sets themselves. That's a lot of time wrangling that data. You got to normalize the data, right? You got to put it into different software systems. So that whole part of the process completely reduced, and shippers could go on autopilot basically and just gain the insights that they need to make business decisions the next day, which is what you want, right?
That's really,
we all know, anybody who's done any kind of analysis knows that, like, hey, it would be really great if I could just get to the point where I have my table with my numbers in it, and I could just like figure out what you do next, right? So,
Well, and one thing that we haven't talked about is the negotiation of contracts, which Reveel does do as well, which does help with scaling for success, because that reduces time and having to go through all of that.
Yes.
Right? We haven't even talked about that, but
it's complete autopilot on your invoices, right? We scan them, scrub them, and then submit the claims on behalf of the shipper, right? And then they just look at a dashboard and see these are the things that the claims were.
And they're pages and pages long. So I know people love that. All right. So last question. What can people expect from this partnership from Deposco and Reveel coming together in 2025?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to a conversation we've referenced a few times, which was talking with one of our shared clients, talking with their CMO, finding those areas. I think we would be foolish if we started saying that we knew all the information. So you're going to see more collaboration with customers, more insights, more areas of what's really important to them, what's moving the needle for them, while we take our information and our understanding from trade shows like Manifest, what we're learning from our network and more, and helping to optimize that. And so ahead for me, as we look, where I really hope to focus is new product innovation, new data sharing, new areas of data that we can really bring to the table so that we're really increasing that customer experience.
Love that. Collaboration. All right. What else for you?
I mean, it's two big areas, right? It's more transparency, right? And that's what our integration is doing in our partnership. So continue to build upon that, because that's just infinite, right? There's so much transparency you can build from the data sets. And then the second piece is then speed to the actual savings. Right now that you have transparency to roll as insights are, let's get to the savings faster, than we did previously, so that companies can really see the impact, right? Because they want to be able to actually measure what they're doing and seeing if it's actually saving money.
Yeah. Such a great example of how collaboration really is the future of business. Actionable insights, you're boosting profitability for clients. You're making that customer experience that much more seamless for their customer, all important things when you're thinking about working with a new technology partner. Now, if you want some more information, you can check them out at revealgroup.com and deposco.com. I'm sure they can also reach out to you both on LinkedIn. Right?
Yes, they can.
All right. And then did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, according to Gartner, what percentage of data science projects failed to yield actionable results? Well, it's 85%. Did you know that?
I knew that. Yeah.
Wow.
5%.
That's a really, really big number. With an estimated 30% of generative AI projects abandoned after proof of concept. Mark, you look stunned and surprised.
Jack because Jack and I were talking about this before, and I think like my immediate reaction to those numbers was that because it comes down to best in breed in the whole like ecosystem, right? A lot of people are trying to create like AI around a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you don't have the subject matter expertise, it's just going to be watered down stuff. And that's the nice part about like, working with an organization like Deposco that has a very strong emphasis on execution, right?
Yeah.
They're going to give you actionable insights through AI, machine learning. Chances are it's probably going to happen. It's going to reach fruition. And then our end, when it comes to parcel spend management, if we're giving you an actual insight, it's because you actually, if you take that step forward with that actual insight, you're actually going to say, but it's because we have that focus, right?
Yeah.
In those areas.
You need to work with the right people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. And understanding what do I need to look at, and the build versus buy versus partner kind of dilemma there is really important.
Well, this has been fun. Jack and Mark, thank you so much for joining me here at Manifest, talking about Deposco and Reveel. Go and check them out online. Go and follow these guys on LinkedIn, and I will see you all soon.